Last night wasn't quiet for them. It wasn't one of those nights where you distract yourself until sleep wins. It wasn't a night of scrolling endlessly or pretending nothing is wrong. It was heavy. The kind of heavy that sits on your chest and refuses to move. The kind where silence gets loud. And at some point, when there was no one around to hold it together for, they broke. Not gently, not elegantly. They cried loudly. The kind of cry that surprises even you when it comes out. The kind that feels like it's been building for weeks, maybe months, maybe longer. The kind where your shoulders shake and you don't even try to wipe the tears away fast enough. And the reason wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a betrayal. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't some explosive moment that everyone could point to and say, that's why. It was you, or more accurately, the thought of losing you. They didn't cry because you did something wrong. They cried because they realized something too late. They also acknowledged something that stung. If you walk away now, you would be justified. That thought hurt, not because they think you will leave tomorrow, but because they know you would have every right to, and the idea that they might lose you fairly because of their own hesitation feels unbearable. They don't want to fight for you after you've detached. They want to show up before you do. That's the difference. Last night's tears weren't weakness, they were awareness. They replayed your recent conversations in their head. The way your tone changed slightly. The way you stopped over-explaining. The way you didn't push for clarity anymore. The way you seemed steadier, detached in a peaceful way. And that's what hurt. Because they realized you weren't fighting anymore. You weren't demanding reassurance. You weren't asking, where do we stand? You weren't trying to force anything forward. You were accepting whatever was being given. And when someone who loves deeply stops pushing and starts accepting, it usually means they're preparing to let go. That realization broke them. They started thinking about the first time they felt something shift with you. How natural it felt. How easy it was to talk to you. How calm they felt in your presence. They remembered the way you listened without interrupting. The way you stayed soft even when things were confusing. The way you never tried to control them. And they realized something painful. You had been consistent. They had been cautious. You had been open. They had been calculating. You had shown up. They had hesitated. And hesitation doesn't feel dangerous until you realize it may cost you something real. That's when the tears started. Because for the first time, they imagined you fully moving on. Not threatening to, not playing games, not trying to provoke a reaction. Just genuinely deciding you deserve something clearer. They pictured you with someone else. Someone decisive. Someone who doesn't need time to figure it out. Someone who sees your value immediately and says it out loud. And instead of feeling jealous in a possessive way, they felt regret. Regret that they didn't step forward sooner. Regret that they let ambiguity stretch. Regret that they assumed you would always be there while they sorted out their feelings. They underestimated your quiet strength. You don't beg. You don't compete. You don't overextend forever. When you feel uncertainty for too long, you pull back gracefully. And that grace is what broke them. Because it means you can leave without chaos. You can leave without drama. You can leave without screaming. And that's harder to fight against. They realized they might wake up one day and you would simply feel different. Not cold, not angry, just unavailable in a way that's final. And they don't want that. Last night they weren't crying because they're weak. They were crying because they finally admitted how much you matter. They admitted that your absence would not just be inconvenient, it would be devastating. Not loudly devastating, quietly devastating. The kind where you go through your day pretending you're fine, but something feels permanently off. They cried because they recognized that what you bring into their life isn't chaos or intensity, it's stability, it's understanding, it's emotional safety, and emotional safety is rare. They thought about the times you stayed calm when they were confused, the times you gave space without turning cold, the times you showed care without demanding immediate return. You loved with dignity. and they may have mistaken dignity for endless patience. Last night, that illusion shattered. They saw clearly that you are not someone who waits forever. You are someone who chooses peace, and if peace requires stepping away, you will. They don't want to be the reason you step away. They don't want to look back months from now realizing they lost something rare because they were afraid to be clear. That's what the tears were about. Not guilt, not drama, clarity. Clarity hitting all at once. Clarity that you are not just someone interesting. You are someone important, and important people are not replaceable. They lay there after the crying slowed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of their own delay, wondering why it took the fear of losing you to fully understand what you mean to them. And the most painful part? They realized you never forced this realization. You never manipulated. You never threatened. You never said, "You'll regret this." You simply adjusted your energy, and that quiet adjustment echoed louder than any ultimatum could have. They're not crying because you hurt them. They're crying because they might have hurt you by not choosing clearly, and the thought that you might have felt uncertain or undervalued because of their hesitation makes their chest tighten. They don't want to be the lesson you learn about settling for half clarity. They want to be the person who steps up before it's too late. And that urgency is new, because until now, they thought they had time. Last night proved they might not. And when someone finally feels the possibility of losing what they love, the tears are real. Not performative, not dramatic, real. And this realization is only the beginning of what they're about to do next. After the tears slowed and the room grew quiet again, they didn't immediately feel better. Crying doesn't fix clarity. It just releases the pressure long enough for you to sit with the truth. And the truth, sitting in their chest last night, was simple but unbearable. They have been risking you. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but carelessly. There's a difference. Carelessness doesn't always look cruel. Sometimes it looks like, "I need more time." Sometimes it looks like silence when reassurance would have taken 10 seconds. Sometimes it looks like assuming someone strong will just keep understanding forever. They realized they've been leaning on your strength without acknowledging its limits. And that's what made the tears come back in waves. They started replaying specific moments, not the dramatic ones, but the subtle ones. The time you asked gently, "Where do you see this going?" And they gave you a half answer. The time you pulled back slightly and they noticed but didn't address it. The time you expressed disappointment in a calm tone instead of anger. They remember all of it. And now those moments feel heavier than they did before, because they can see what you were doing. You weren't being dramatic. You weren't testing them. You weren't trying to pressure them. You were giving them space to choose you freely. And instead of choosing boldly, they hesitated quietly. Last night, when they imagined you emotionally stepping away for good, something in their chest cracked. They pictured you waking up one morning and deciding, "I deserve clarity." They imagined you no longer checking your phone for their name, no longer adjusting your tone, no longer trying to understand their silence. That image didn't make them angry, it made them scared, because they know you wouldn't leave in chaos, you would leave in peace, and peace is final. They also realized something else that broke them a little more. You never made them feel small for their confusion. You never mocked their hesitation. You never turned their uncertainty into a weapon. You handled it with maturity, and maturity deserves reciprocity. They started asking themselves hard questions. If she walks away because I couldn't step forward, will I be able to forgive myself? If someone else meets her where I didn't, will I accept that as my consequence? If I lose her because I wanted to be sure instead of being brave, will I regret that for years? The answers weren't comfortable. They weren't quick. But they were clear. Yes, they would regret it. Because what you offer isn't loud excitement. It's rare emotional steadiness. They've dated intensity before. They've experienced connections fueled by adrenaline. They've seen how quickly those burn out. What they feel with you isn't firework love, it's foundation love. And foundation love doesn't always scream at first. It builds quietly until one day you realize it's holding up your entire emotional world. Last night, they felt what it would be like if that foundation disappeared, and that's why they cried. They also cried because they finally admitted something to themselves they had been avoiding. They love you. Not in a reckless, overwhelming way, not in a fantasy-driven way, in a steady, real way. In the kind of way that makes you think about long-term consequences. In the kind of way that makes you care about someone's peace as much as your own. But love without action is just emotion, and that realization hurt, because they've been feeling deeply but acting cautiously. And caution, when stretched too long, starts to look like indifference. They never meant for you to feel uncertain, but intention doesn't erase impact. That truth hit hard. They imagined you lying in your own bed some nights, wondering if they care as much as you do, wondering if you're reading too much into things, wondering if you should pull back to protect yourself. And the thought that you might have doubted your place in their heart because of their silence made their throat tighten. They don't want to be the reason you question your worth. They don't want to be the almost love in your story. They don't want you to look back one day and say, I gave him the chance to step up, and he didn't. Last night wasn't just about fear of losing you. It was about confronting who they've been in this connection, and realizing they can do better. They stayed awake long after the tears dried, thinking. Not in circles, in decisions. They know they can't keep hovering in the middle. They know you won't tolerate ambiguity forever, and they respect you too much to drag this out until you detach naturally. They also realized something important. You haven't been cold. You haven't been distant. You've simply matched energy, and that mirror effect is powerful. When you stopped overextending, they felt it. When you stopped pushing for clarity, they noticed. When you became calmer and more self-contained, it forced them to see what they could lose. You didn't threaten them into realization. You revealed it through consistency. That's what made the tears genuine. No drama forced this awakening, just awareness. This morning when they woke up, their eyes were heavy, but their mind was clearer. They don't want another night like that. They don't want to cry because they were too afraid to say what they feel. They don't want to sit in regret while you quietly move on. And for the first time, the fear of losing you outweighs the fear of being vulnerable. That's new. That's growth. They're not crying because they're weak. They're crying because they're finally ready to stop pretending this is casual. You matter, deeply, and now they know it. The question is no longer, do I feel something? The question is, will I be brave enough to show it before it's too late? And that answer is forming inside them right now. When the sun came up the next morning, the world outside looked the same, but something inside them had shifted permanently. The kind of crying they did the night before doesn't leave you unchanged. It drains something out of you, yes, but it also clears something. It strips away denial. It removes the comfortable excuses. It forces you to see yourself without filters. They sat on the edge of their bed for a long time, elbows on their knees, staring at nothing in particular. The house was quiet. Their phone was on the nightstand. Your name wasn't lighting up the screen, and that silence felt louder than it ever had before. They realized something uncomfortable. They had been assuming you would always be there while they figured things out. Not because you're weak, but because you're patient. There's a difference. Patience can look like permanence if you're not careful, and they mistook your steady presence for something guaranteed. Last night shattered that illusion. You aren't guaranteed. You're choosing to stay. And once they understood that, truly understood it, the weight of it settled deep in their chest. They started thinking about the first time you showed them you weren't going to beg for clarity. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was subtle. You simply stopped pushing. You stopped asking the same questions. You stopped filling in the gaps when they left space. You adjusted. And that adjustment felt small at first. Now it feels enormous, because they see what it really was, you protecting your heart. They imagined you slowly preparing yourself to detach, not angrily, not resentfully, just practically. The way you would quietly accept that if they can't step forward fully, you will eventually step away peacefully. That image hurt more than anything, because peaceful detachment is hard to reverse. If you were screaming or fighting or demanding, they could react. They could fix something loud. But you don't operate like that. You recalibrate internally, and once you do, it's almost impossible to pull you back to where you were before. That realization is what stayed with them all day. They went through normal routines, work, conversations, responsibilities, but underneath it all was one thought repeating quietly. I can't lose her, because I was afraid. They replayed your kindness, not the obvious kind, the subtle kind, the way you check in when they seem stressed, the way you notice when their tone shifts, the way you don't weaponize their vulnerability, the way you never mocked their confusion, even when you deserved more certainty. You gave them room to grow, and they used that room to hesitate. That contrast is painful to face. They also thought about how you've never tried to compete for their attention. You've never tried to prove you're better than anyone else. You've never begged to be chosen. You simply are, and that quiet confidence is what made them fall in the first place. But quiet confidence also means you won't stay where you're not fully chosen. They started noticing how their body reacts when they imagine you gone. There's a tightening in their chest, a hollow feeling in their stomach. Not dramatic panic, but deep discomfort. The kind that signals something meaningful is at risk. It's not ego, it's attachment. They realized they're not afraid of being alone. They're afraid of being without you. And those are two very different fears. Being alone is manageable. Losing someone who feels like home is not. They began questioning why they waited, why they thought time would somehow make things clearer without action, why they assumed love could grow quietly without being expressed clearly. The answer wasn't flattering. Fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of being misunderstood, fear of committing and being hurt. But here's what they finally understood. The fear of losing you is stronger than the fear of being vulnerable. That shift is everything. Because when fear changes direction, behavior follows. They don't want another night like the last one. They don't want to cry because they watched you drift away slowly while they stayed silent. They don't want to explain to themselves months from now why they let something rare slip through their fingers. You aren't just someone they're interested in. You're someone they respect, and respect deepens love. They started thinking about what you deserve, not in an abstract way, specifically. You deserve clarity, you deserve consistency, you deserve someone who doesn't leave you guessing. And they realized something sobering. You have been giving those things already. You've been consistent, you've been clear about your boundaries, you've been honest about your feelings without demanding control. And they've been responding cautiously instead of courageously. That imbalance can't continue. And awareness changes things. They're starting to understand that love isn't proven in private emotions. It's proven in visible decisions, in words spoken clearly, in risks taken intentionally. They don't want you wondering anymore. They don't want you pulling back slowly because you feel uncertain. They don't want you teaching yourself how to live without them, because they failed to step forward. They want to choose you openly. But choosing openly requires courage. And courage takes a breath before it speaks. Right now, they're standing at that breath. The pause before action. The moment where you decide whether you'll let fear win again or whether you'll finally step into what you feel. They cried loudly last night because they imagined losing you. Today, they're thinking about how to make sure that doesn't happen. And that shift from fear to intention is where everything begins to change. By the fourth day after that night, the tears were gone, but the impact remained. Crying had emptied something out of them, but it had also carved space for a decision. And decisions don't always arrive loudly. Sometimes they form slowly, quietly, like something settling into place after a storm. They realized they have been living in a half state with you, half expressing, half committing, half reassuring, half showing up, and you have been responding with grace. But grace is not endless. That understanding has been sitting with them all week. It follows them into conversations. It lingers when they see your name appear on their phone. It echoes when they remember the way your energy shifted, not dramatically, but intentionally. They know you're not waiting around in desperation. You're simply observing, adjusting, protecting your peace. And that quiet strength makes them feel both admiration and urgency. They don't want to be the almost in your story. They don't want to be the person you once cared deeply about, but eventually had to let go of because they couldn't get it together. They've started imagining a future where they do nothing, where they continue being cautious, where they keep things undefined just a little longer. And in that imagined future, they see you slowly stabilizing without them. They see your warmth becoming lighter. They see your investment decreasing naturally. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped hoping. That image unsettles them more than confrontation ever could. Because when hope disappears quietly, it rarely returns the same. They've also begun reflecting on why they hesitated in the first place. It wasn't because they didn't feel enough. It was because they felt deeply and were afraid of mishandling it, afraid of promising something they couldn't maintain, afraid of stepping into something serious and failing. But here's the realization that hit them hardest. Avoiding action doesn't prevent failure. It creates a different kind of loss. Silence can cost just as much as recklessness. They understand now that you don't need perfection. You need honesty. You don't need grand speeches. You need clarity. You don't need intensity. You need intention. And intention is what they're preparing to show. There's something about the way you love that feels rare to them. You don't cling. You don't control. You don't try to mold someone into who you want them to be. You observe who they are, and then you decide if that aligns with your peace. That level of self-awareness commands respect. And respect, when combined with affection, turns into something powerful. They don't just like you, they admire you. They admire your restraint when things feel uncertain. They admire your refusal to overextend yourself. They admire the way you maintain dignity, even when you feel deeply. Last night's tears were about fear. Today's thoughts are about action. They're starting to realize that if they don't step forward clearly, they are actively choosing to lose you. Not accidentally, not tragically, intentionally through inaction. And that realization shifts everything. They don't want to wake up weeks from now sensing that you've emotionally moved to a safer place without them. They don't want to watch your replies grow shorter. They don't want to feel you becoming independent of the idea of them. They want to meet you where you are, fully, without hesitation. But here's the truth they're wrestling with. Stepping forward means vulnerability. It means saying, I care about you more than I've shown. It means risking that you might respond cautiously because of the time they took. It means accepting that you may need reassurance now. They're willing. That's what changed. Before, they were unsure if the risk was worth it. Now, they're more afraid of losing you than of being vulnerable. And fear redirected becomes courage. They've been thinking about the specific moment when they'll say it. Not in a rehearsed way, in an intentional way. They don't want to blurt it out impulsively. They want it to feel grounded, real, matched with behavior. They're planning to show consistency first, to be present, to respond fully, to initiate, to close the small gaps they once left open. Not with grand gestures, but with steady action. Because they know words without behavior won't mean much to you. You respond to patterns, and they're ready to change theirs. They've also accepted something humbling. You may not immediately trust their shift. You may need time to feel secure again. You may guard your heart slightly. And they don't resent that. They understand it. because you've been protecting yourself quietly. They don't want to rush your comfort. They want to earn it. That's new for them. Before, they wanted certainty before stepping forward. Now they're willing to step forward even if certainty takes time. That's growth. They cried loudly because they imagined losing you. Now they're moving intentionally because they want to keep you. There's a difference between wanting someone and choosing someone. Wanting is emotion. Choosing is action. They're transitioning from the first to the second. You may not see the full shift yet. It may come gradually, in clearer communication, in steadier presence, in more direct language. But internally, the decision has been made. They don't want to watch you walk away gracefully. They want to walk toward you deliberately. And that's what last night changed. Not just their feelings, their direction. They're no longer sitting in the middle. They're stepping forward. Not because they panicked, but because they finally understood what you mean to them. And once that understanding settled in, staying silent felt heavier than speaking up. This time, they don't want regret to be the loudest sound in the room. They want clarity to be. And that clarity is moving them toward you now.